before the explosive growth and increasingly destructive behavior of wild hog populations across Texas. Farmers could no longer afford to chase individual animals using exhausting manual methods. Small-scale hunting was little more than a temporary fix, while ordinary fences were quickly smashed apart by the sheer strength of these powerful animals. To protect hundreds of acres of cornfields and crops from being torn apart night after night, Nick came to one clear realization. Professionally designed wild hog traps were the most effective, economical, and comprehensive solution for controlling these destructive animals. An effective trap is not something that can simply be bought off the shelf. It requires a deep understanding of the wild hog's behavior and tremendous physical strength. Nick decided to build his own trap inside the farm's metal workshop. He carefully welded each heavy steel panel and engineered a highly sensitive spring-loaded gate, ensuring that once a wild hog entered, there would be virtually no chance of escape. As soon as the new steel trap was completed, Nick transported it into the field and positioned it along a game trail near the woods. But the Battle of Wits proved far from easy. Reviewing footage from his infrared trail cameras that night, Nick realized the wild hogs were extremely cautious and refused to enter the trap. They stood outside, sniffing the air, circled the steel enclosure, and then disappeared back into the darkness. Their intelligence forced Nick to rethink his strategy, improving both the bait placement and the trap's camouflage. Undeterred, Nick decided to expand his defensive network. On a clear, sunny day, he installed a large cage trap in the center of the farm. At the same time, he carefully set up a second trap in another section of the fields. Then scattered fragrant sweet corn throughout both traps to eliminate the animal's suspicion. Nick's patient strategy, combined with irresistible bait, finally paid off. As darkness fell, the scent of sweet corn overcame the wild hog's caution, and one group after another wandered into the traps during the night. Then snap, the automatic trigger activated, and the heavy trap gate slammed shut with tremendous force. The following morning, when Nick returned to inspect the trap, he was astonished by the number of wild hogs he had captured. An entire sounder was tightly confined inside the cage. Nick quickly backed up his pickup truck and safely loaded the captured wild hogs for transport. Success continued as Nick moved on to inspect the next trap he had installed the previous day. Just as he had expected, the sturdy design and carefully placed bait had worked perfectly, capturing every wild hog in that area inside the cage trap. The combination of rugged homemade traps and modern trapping systems created a complete containment strategy. No matter how intelligent or cautious the wild hogs were, they could not overcome careful planning and preparation. One by one, the remaining destructive animals were secured, loaded onto the truck, and removed from the agricultural area. As the midday sun rose overhead, trucks filled with captured wild hogs rolled away, restoring peace and quiet to the endless cornfields. Looking back on the entire process, from the long hours of welding steel in the workshop to the early setbacks when the wild hogs avoided the traps, and finally to the remarkable success of that morning, Nick became even more convinced of one thing. Wild hog traps are far more than simple tools. They are a testament to the ingenuity, perseverance, and determination of Texas farmers. Faced with the relentless destruction caused by wildlife, they choose not to surrender, but to overcome the challenge through practical knowledge and careful planning. Thanks to these strong and effective trapping systems, the farm is once again well protected, with the promise of abundant harvests across the land. As the sun rises over the Texas countryside, I arrive at Nick's ranch. For weeks, he has been documenting growing signs that feral hogs are moving closer to the areas where his family lives and works. Rooted up fields, damaged fences, and newly formed game trails have convinced both of us to spend the entire day inspecting the monitoring sites that have been prepared in advance. Our first stop is the backyard behind the house. Nick has repeatedly found fresh tracks here and scattered bait the day before to help monitor the level of feral hog activity. When we arrive, the ground is still covered with numerous fresh footprints. It is clear that this remains one of their regular travel routes. I feel relieved that our earlier assumptions were correct, but at the same time, I cannot ignore the concern that the hogs have moved closer to the family's living area than ever before. Leaving the ranch, we head deeper into the forest where Nick says he has often seen groups of feral hogs moving at sunrise and sunset. The air beneath the trees is cool, but the ground has been torn up across a wide area. Layers of overlapping tracks reveal that a large group passed through during the night. Standing there, I understand why Nick often says that even a few days without monitoring can lead to significant damage to pastures and crops. The third survey site is only about 300 meters from the ranch. Such a short distance shows how blurred the boundary has become between farmland and the surrounding natural habitat. As I examine the area, it becomes clear that the feral hogs have been using the same travel corridor repeatedly over many days. This information is especially valuable because it helps Nick identify which sections of fencing need reinforcement and where future monitoring efforts should be concentrated. By early afternoon, we continue to another location near the edge of the forest. The signs here indicate that activity began quite early in the day. I spend considerable time recording the locations of game trails, travel directions, and the distance to the nearest water source. As we combine observations from multiple sites, the overall picture of the hog's range becomes much clearer. That is exactly what makes today's survey far more valuable than simply examining each location on its own. The fifth site keeps my attention for quite a while. Tracks of many different sizes appear along the same trail, ranging from large adults to young piglets. This tells us that these are not solitary animals searching for food, but an entire sounder living and traveling together. Looking at the long stretches of rooted up ground, I understand why local landowners become increasingly concerned as feral hog populations grow. In a relatively short period, they could dramatically alter the condition of pastures and cultivated land. As the sun gradually disappears behind the oak trees, we return to the final monitoring site, located back on the ranch. Even after a long day in the field, we decide to complete one last inspection to finish collecting the day's data. The results show that feral hog activity near the residential area remains significant. Nick lets out a deep sigh and says that what he hopes for most is not to find more fresh tracks, but to see these travel routes become quieter over time. I completely understand how he feels. For a ranch manager, success is measured not by a single survey, but by whether long-term efforts to protect the land and crops continue to make a real difference. As the day comes to an end, we organize all of our notes, field photographs, and map travel routes. Every survey site adds another piece to the puzzle, helping us better understand how feral hogs use the landscape around the ranch. That knowledge provides an essential foundation for making informed management decisions aimed at reducing conflicts between agriculture and wildlife, while helping preserve the balance of the local ecosystem. Florida's rainy season brings damp mornings and air heavy with humidity. For ranch managers, it is also one of the most unpredictable times of the year. Rain changes the scent of the landscape, causing many animals to alter their travel routes overnight. That is why I decided to begin today's survey before sunrise, checking every monitoring site around the ranch to see how the feral hogs have been moving. The first site is the one I have the highest expectations for. Over the past few weeks, this area has consistently shown heavy signs of activity, so I expect to collect valuable new data. However, when I arrive, the site is surprisingly quiet. There are only a few fresh tracks, and the level of activity is much lower than I anticipated. To be honest, I feel a little disappointed, especially since this is the first stop of the day. Still, I quickly remind myself that in field research, unexpected results are just as important as the ones we hope for. They suggest that the feral hogs may have changed their routines or shifted toward areas with better food sources. The next location is a wide grassy pasture inside the ranch. The scene here is completely different. Large sections of lush green grass have been rooted up, and the ground is covered with layers of fresh, overlapping tracks. In just one night, the entire area has changed dramatically. Standing in the middle of the pasture, I feel both surprised and concerned. These grasslands are not only an important food source for livestock, but also the foundation of the ranch's operation. Signs like these suggest that the impact on the property could be much greater than we had previously imagined. Leaving the pasture behind, I continue to another monitoring site near the trail leading into the low woodland. The evidence collected here indicates that a much larger group of feral hogs has been active in the area. What catches my attention is not simply their numbers, but the signs showing that they attempted to escape in several different directions once they sensed human activity nearby. Looking at the claw marks on the ground and the heavily trampled soil, I realize that the way wildlife responds to changes in its environment is far more complex than any camera alone can capture. As we move deeper into the forest, the appearance of the vegetation gradually changes. Thick tree canopies allow only scattered rays of sunlight to reach the ground. Here, I observe a group of feral hogs with noticeably darker coats than those usually seen near the open pastures. Morgan believes this difference may be related to the habitat and environmental conditions of each area. Observations like these provide valuable information for comparing groups of feral hogs living within the same region, but using different types of terrain. By late afternoon, we inspect another survey site near an area of open woodland. Activity here is significantly lower than at the previous locations. At first, I am a little disappointed because I had hoped to gather more information. Then I realized that this uneven distribution is actually a common characteristic of wildlife. Some places are full of activity, while others remain almost silent. Only by combining observation from every location can a true pattern begin to emerge. As we arrive at the final site, the Florida sky turns a deep shade of gray. Before long, heavy rain begins to fall, turning the dirt roads into slippery stretches of mud. Traveling through the forest becomes much more difficult, yet the rain also preserves fresh footprints with remarkable clarity. Standing beneath the trees, watching the raindrops strike the ground, I reflect on the day's survey. Some sites exceeded every expectation, while others were completely different from what I had predicted. But that contrast is exactly what makes nature so fascinating. It is constantly changing and never follows a fixed pattern. By the time I return to the ranch after dark, I spread out the survey maps once again and compare every note collected throughout the day. The rainfall, the newly formed travel routes, and the changing levels of feral hog activity all contribute to a clearer overall picture. Every survey helps us better understand the behavior of these animals, while providing ranch managers with the information they need to make informed decisions that reduce conflicts between agricultural operations and the natural ecosystem. It is a long-term process that requires patience, continuous observation, and respect for the natural patterns that have always existed.